Hi there, my name is Adrian Rimmer.
Nicholas Steen.
And we're here again with the Pop-Up COP on day 11.
Yes.
So very much looking forward to a discussion we're having today with three people who have been active around and in COP as usual.
So thanks very much everyone for joining us. It's right near the end of COP today. And we have with us James Wyatt from Baker McKenzie, Kieran Brophy from LSEG London Stock Exchange Group, and Tom Grills from the Clean Air Fund. So thank you very much for joining us. Two from London and Tom in Belém. So we're going to start with you, James. Would you like to talk about Baker McKenzie's interest in COP and your clients' remits around this? Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Adrian. Great to be here. I'm James Wyatt. I'm a partner in the Energy and Infrastructure team at Baker McKenzie in London. And a lot of my work focuses on making major decarbonisation projects bankable. So projects all the way from hydrogen to sustainable aviation fuel, carbon capture and storage, nuclear, all the way over to nature-based carbon removal and industrial carbon removal projects. A lot of that, as you can imagine, relies on carbon markets and the robustness of carbon markets, and in particular the Article 6 framework to create investable structures, especially in emerging markets.
And you're a law firm, correct, James? So that gives a flavour of your approach to this.
Exactly that. And a lot of my day-to-day job will be on conferences with clients or drafting contracts for clients. So why is COP relevant? Well, the COP is directly relevant to a lot of my work because what's being negotiated this week in particular, for example, the integrity of the Article 6 rules, the finance obligations under Article 9.1, and the debate over aligning all financial flows with the national climate objectives. All of that determines, taken together, whether private capital is going to be able to continue to scale up and support public finances in making the climate carbon reduction possible. One of the big stories of COP30 so far is that the rule book is finally shifting from design to implementation. So what do I mean by that? Up till Paris, it was design, and now we're implementing the design that's been agreed upon. So countries are actually moving from the theoretical to bilateral agreements, registries, eligibility lists, and businesses, so my clients, trying to work out how they can use all of this and use high integrity credits, so credits which are permanent and will abate carbon permanently, consistently across voluntary and compliance carbon markets. And one of the things that stands out to me, and I'm sure others most so far, is Brazil's multilateral package, which is an attempt, a really good attempt by the host to firewall the toughest issues, package them up together and deal with them together. So financing, reduction ambitions, transparency, they want to land political agreement on this quickly, which I think is really important for private markets. One big tension, one huge talking point is the fossil fuel transition roadmap. You've got probably more than 80 countries that want it, and many others that the sort of the usual large oil producing nations see this as a big fat red line. So I think in this COP, we're right at the point where politics meets markets, the rubber hitting the road. And for those of us structuring or helping clients to structure real carbon abatement projects, the outcomes of this COP are going to translate directly into commercial certainty and ultimately whether these projects can be developed efficiently and economically or not. Adrian and Nicola, back to you.
Thank you. That's really very helpful. Just one, for people who are new to these sort of things, red line means that people really, they're going to fight on this point. So it's one of the tough issues is what James was alluding to. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, James. And yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more in terms of the need to scale these. And one of the reasons we've been active in this London Stock Exchange as part of LSEG, really looking at how we create the mechanisms for investing through public markets into these. So we absolutely have to have the right rules to drive that scale. Coming now to a colleague at London Stock Exchange Group, so Kieran Brophy. Kieran is the author of a research note or research report, I should say, that is published ahead of COP every year called the Net Zero Atlas. And that's, I'll let Kieran explain what that does, but that really is a key piece of research helping investors understand the landscape as we move into COP every year. But Kieran, tell us about the purpose of the Net Zero Atlas and really some of the key findings this year.
Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much, Adrian, and great to be with everyone. It was a kind of report that has over the years grown legs. So we're now in our 5th edition, and I think we're at 100 pages now. So it's quite a meaty document that I obviously recommend everyone read. I think pretty simply, the point of the report is to distill the latest climate science and the latest thinking for an investment audience. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. We look at 2 sides of the climate risk coin, and I'm going to spell that out to listeners. We focus on physical risk, which might be the more obvious one. So what is the impact that extreme weather and projected increase in extreme weather is going to have for people and for businesses? The other side is what's called transition risk, and that's the risk in what happens when economies decarbonize to a lower carbon economy. So you might, if you're an investor and you're exposed to oil and gas, I'll use the most obvious example, you might be left with stranded assets in a few years' time or in a decade's time. That's kind of using a very kind of, I guess, cliche example, but there's more nuances there. And I think what's really interesting, and again, we're 10 years after the Paris Agreement. For me, writing this report has been really interesting in ways that I wasn't expecting. So it's 10 years, as I said, since the Paris Agreement. It's kind of incredible, actually, what the agreement has achieved. Really, I know, the talk and the media headlines have focused on maybe who hasn't been at COP this year or who's pulling out of COP or the Paris Agreement this year. But I think when you step back, you realize that 195 countries agreeing to anything was an incredible step. And even when countries pledged their first climate targets 10 years ago, we were still on a trajectory that would see emissions increase, as far as we could see into the time horizon beyond 2030. 180 or just under 180 countries have actually come back since and submitted better targets or more ambitious targets. And so we think we're going to have peak emissions in the next few years before 2030 and then start decarbonizing. So that's kind of a real good news story that I think we should celebrate and remember. And again, for me, I'm just going to be the positive guy today, all right? I've decided. We're now seeing, and COP is kind of a culmination of 2 years of work that we've been doing at LSEG to try and kind of quantify what do these targets mean. And over the last 12 months, we've started to see a third wave. So the first wave in Paris, the second wave was those 180 countries coming back, setting more ambitious targets. There's now a third wave that are 2035 targets. And again, I think it's something that's kind of lost in the noise of COP over the last few weeks. To be blunt, I think at the beginning of the year, the Paris Agreement and the mechanism of setting new targets was kind of up in the air. It was hanging in the balance with the US signaling that it'll pull out in January, and what that meant for other countries, to be frank. And what we've seen in the last few weeks in particular is a whole wave of countries now coming through with new targets. And so I think we will have, probably by the end of the year, 75% of global emissions with new 2035 targets. China, Indonesia, Mexico, Turkey have all pledged to peak their emissions. And I think that's, something to an optimistic note.
Yeah. And what is that from the perspective of where we were expecting temperature rise to go to previously and where we were currently looking at the trajectory today if you add up all of those commitments?
Yeah, great question. So we focus on the G20. We don't look at all emissions, but the G20 covers somewhere between 70 and 80% of global emissions, so a very kind of sizable chunk. Before these latest, what they're called NDCs 3.0 is the jargon, but these are the 2035 targets. We were on course for, I think, about 2.4, 2.5 degrees of warming. That has shifted slightly lower. It's now between, I think, 2.2 and 2.3. So still, well above 2 degrees, so not aligning with the Paris Agreement. But, again, a ratcheting of ambition. And so, yeah, that's obviously everyone.
At the time of the Paris Agreement, we were headed towards 4 degrees. So I think that's the
they said 5 actually at the beginning of the announcement. We mentioned it yesterday. So
yeah. I mean,
moving. Tanker's moving.
Yeah. I mean, a health warning with all this that, a document on paper does not signal actual policy and legislation and actual decarbonization at the end of the day. What we have always stated in LSEG is that it's a massive signal for investors that extra policy, extra regulation is coming down the line, and investors need to be ready for it.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm going to jump in and move on to Tom quickly. Thank you, Kieran. Fantastic. People can find the report online. We can post the links to it.
Put it on the website as well.
Yeah, and the website. Yeah. Tom, tell us why you're at Belém. How's it going? Why are you there? What are your concerns?
And what's the Clean Air Fund doing?
Great. Thank you so much, Adrian and Nicola. Really glad to be here. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm in the Blue Zone in Belém at the Super Pollutant Solutions Pavilion. And as we started speaking, different side events have popped up around me. But hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. I'm Tom Groves. I work for the Clean Air Fund, which is a global philanthropic organization that's working to tackle air pollution with a view to deliver on climate and health. So we're in Belém essentially because air pollution and climate change are so inherently intertwined and interlinked. Many of the same sources that are producing greenhouse gases are also producing air pollution. And then also many of the same pollutants, which when they're in the atmosphere are warming our climate, are also bad for our health when we breathe them in. So there's this really complex but interesting connection between the two issues. And ultimately, the climate crisis is also a health crisis. And bringing a focus of climate, air pollution, and health together can provide several opportunities. So in the economic case, if we factor in the health benefits from cleaning the air as we decarbonize, so many policies swing from being a net cost to a net benefit. And that's because with cleaner air, you have lower healthcare costs, increased productivity in the workforce, longer lives. There's a really impactful statistic from the Lancet and the IPCC, which says the cost of delivering on the policies in the Paris Agreement could be outweighed by the economic benefits that gives with cleaner air globally. So there's a huge economic case to talk about air pollution and climate together. And air pollution is also a more local issue. In many countries, it's higher on the political agenda, and it brings additional routes to bring finance and political will to the kind of emissions reductions we all want to see. So my role at Clean Air Fund is leading our program on super pollutants, and I'm in the Super Pollutants Pavilion right now. And super pollutants basically means the other half of global warming. So of the 1.4, 1.5 degrees that we think we're at today, about half of that is because of carbon dioxide. But actually what is spoken less about is the other half is from these non-carbon dioxide pollutants like methane, black carbon, and tropospheric.
Could you repeat that last bit? You broke up, please, Tom, if you can hear me. While we're getting Tom back, I was just talking about this figure of 8 million deaths before Tom came on with Adrian. And this is something that is very important, I feel, for clean cook stoves, which many of you might have heard about. There are still millions of women around the world effectively walking like donkeys, carrying wood on their back every day, and it's 2025. I just don't see how this can be possible almost. And there are people dying because of air pollutants, smoke and black dust and stuff in their homes. So the benefits of reducing the amount of wood often that is used in cooking and giving people the option. We're not forcing anyone to do anything, but I can tell you, if I was carrying 5 tons of wood on my back a year, I'd want to be carrying 3 tons. So, you know, this is something that we you know, there's a very clear line at a grassroots level as well to reduce pollutants. I've just been talking about stove projects, Tom, while you're gone. Do you want to carry on?
Yeah, so the black carbon piece, I think, is clearly part of what you were just talking about as you dropped off.
Yes, apologies. This is what's happening in the blue zone here. Wi-Fi, very humid, air conditioning flowing and blowing around. So I appreciate your patience. Sorry about that. So yeah, I think the main thing I wanted to mention in terms of this other half of warming that's also impacting our health is in terms of the formal negotiation process, there are some entry points for these super pollutants. So more countries in the latest climate plans have put methane into their setting targets for 2035. More countries are doing the same for black carbon. More countries are starting to report on these emissions alongside carbon dioxide. And really, the important message for super pollutants is alongside deep decarbonization, that's really important. These other pollutants last in the atmosphere for less time. So if we can reduce these alongside deep decarbonization, we can begin to reduce the peak in temperature that we're going to get to. This is really important alongside the decarbonization conversation. And interestingly, a lot of the progress that's happening in Belém is slightly outside of the formal negotiations. So at the World Leaders Summit, which happened just before Belém, there was good progress around methane, the specific initiatives, leadership from the UK, China, Brazil, around oil and gas methane, around the race for methane. And then yesterday, we had this high-level announcement where black carbon was put on the agenda, where 8 countries came together to endorse an announcement on this. So we're really trying to bring these on the agenda in a way that adds new solutions and other things we can do to reduce warming and help health.
Wonderful.
Well, that warms my heart. Thank you for that. We're just going to wrap up. We've gone over a bit. I'm sorry. You know, that's life in Belém, life here. Thank you very much. 2 things. One, we want to thank EBRD, our sponsors, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, for supporting Pop-Up COP, and also on Wednesday.
Next week. Oh yes, we'll do a wrap up. So we're going to look at what's taken place, what the final outcomes of COP have been, and do a wrap to really give us sort of sense of how those 2 weeks have concluded.
Thank you. Thanks guys. Everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.